The late Christopher Hitchens, when asked, does he believe in free will, replied, I have no choice. It's a question that I dread, actually, because I don't have a very well thought out view about it. I think that, I have a materialist view of the world. I think that things are determined in a rational way by antecedent events. And so that commits me to the view that when I think I have free will, when I think that I'm exercising free choice, I'm deluding myself, that my brain states are determined by physical events. And yet that seems to contradict, to go against the very powerful subjective impression that we all have, that we do have free will. I think all I can do is recommend the works of my colleague Daniel Dennett on the subject, which are fascinating.
And there's a new book by another one of our colleagues, Sam Harris, on free will that's coming out. But
yes.
But I also have to agree that I think everything I know about the world tells me that there's no such thing as free will. I just think we act, but the world behaves as if there's free will, and so it doesn't make much difference. Just like the particles in the room, we can discuss them statistically, and they behave as if they can do things that they're not being forced to do. It's just statistics. And we behave as if we have free will because we live in a very complex world where there's so many factors influencing any of our decisions that you can't trace that free will down to its source. And so the difference between a world where we act as if we have free will, or it looks like we have free will, and we really do, in my mind, is so minimal that it's a question for philosophers to worry about, but not me.
You know that the atheists call themselves free thinkers? Have you heard this? If you go to a college campus, you'll find a free thinker club, right? There's just one problem with the free thinker club. There's no free and there's no thinking going on if we're just made of molecules. If the materialistic view is true, that everything is made of molecules, including everything about you, there's no immaterial realm to you, then you are completely governed by the laws of physics, which means you don't have any free will, which means you're not really thinking, you're just reacting. It defeats any idea that we're really reasonable creatures. In fact, Francis Crick, who looks a little creepy to me, is the guy that discovered the DNA molecule, co-discovered it, and he wrote a book a number of years ago called The Astonishing Hypothesis. And here's what he said. This was his hypothesis. He said, the astonishing hypothesis is that you, your joys and your sorrows, your memories, your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are, in fact, no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. In other words, you are just a molecular machine. You are just a moist robot. That's the theory that atheists are behind today. This is a very clear statement of what is called materialism. Now, I want to ask you this question. Imagine if Crick hadn't written this in his book, but he had written this in his book. Imagine if he had said, the astonishing hypothesis is that my scientific conclusions that I write in this book are, in fact, no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. Would anybody believe him? In fact, let's put it this way. For those of you who were here on Friday night, we did this a little bit. We talked about self-defeating statements. You guys remember the self-defeating statements? Like if somebody says there is no truth, you'll say, is that true? Right? If somebody says you can't know anything, you're going to say, how do you know that? If somebody says there are no absolutes, you're going to say, are you absolutely sure? If somebody says I can't speak a word in English, you're going to say, didn't you just say that in English? You see, these are all self-defeating statements. Well, this is a self-defeating statement, too, to say if you're just a molecular machine, then why should I believe anything you think? Because you're not really thinking, you're just reacting. Your thoughts are all resulting from the laws of physics. So, if Crick were to, this is self-defeating, if Crick were to come around and say, my thoughts are completely determined or determined completely by the non-rational laws of physics, what question would you ask him? I would ask him, then, why should I believe anything you say? Why should I believe that or anything you say? Because if you're just a molecular machine, you're not thinking. There is no thinking going on. Everything is just the result of the laws of physics, and you have no control over it. In fact, this guy was an evolutionist who got it. He put it this way. He said, if my mental processes are determined wholly by the motions of atoms in my brain, I have no reason to suppose that my beliefs are true, and hence I have no reason for supposing my brain is to be composed of atoms. Or I have no reason to believe atheism's true or anything else I think, because every thought I have is the result of the laws of physics. Do you see the problem with materialism? But this is what atheists believe today. In fact, this guy, Daniel Dennett, believes that consciousness is an illusion. One wonders if he was conscious when he wrote this. Can you guys see the problem here? Here's the main problem. Atheists exempt themselves from their own theories. Francis Crick says, everybody's a molecular machine, except me, I'm not a molecular machine. Daniel Dennett says, consciousness is an illusion, except not my consciousness. My consciousness is real. Do you see this? They're exempting themselves from their own theories. Now, if you get a hold of this concept of seeing if somebody's statement meets its own standard, you're going to be a fearless defender of the faith, because half of what you need to know that Christianity is true, and to point out that other things, other worldviews are false, is you need to point out, you need to be able to think about the law of non-contradiction, how to identify self-defeating statements. And atheists have self-defeating statements everywhere.